Hi, hello. I don't know how stable this camera angle is, if it's recording, or if I'm even in frame, or if the phone itself will fall. But hi, hello! I'm Raven, also known as Jello-fello. So, I said a while ago that I would talk about September 21st, 2012 5th period English class because it was, to this day, what I consider one of the worst days or the worst day of my life. Basically, we'd do something in the beginning of the class, and then by the end of the class, we could do whatever we want. So, like the actual classwork was on the board, the teacher had a poem up called Yellow Snow. And the exercise was finding a picture or story or whatever and writing about it, like a personal memory, whatever, I don't remember. Again, 7th grade. It was called Yellow Snow, and it was a picture of her and a friend walking on a snowy sidewalk because it was like in the middle of a snowstorm. Basically, she made her friend, a grown woman at the time, laugh so hard that she straight up peed herself. Now keep this in mind because this is real life foreshadowing if I've ever seen it. So, we get into pat time, and I was in the back corner of the classroom, so we're all sitting in beanbag chairs on the floor, talking to someone who I've known since like 3rd grade, and one of the funniest people I've ever met in my life. Like, he could make me cry laughing just by like blinking. He has like a Gus Johnson kind of sense of humor, it's just amazing. So, he made me laugh so hard that I immediately decided right then and there that like, oh, I have to go to the bathroom. So I get up and go to the front of the class, and I'm like, hey ma'am, can I go to the bathroom? Now, I am the kind of person that just does not like public bathrooms. I mean, who does? But I do not use it unless I have to go. She is like slowly grading her papers and she still doesn't look up at me. And I'm like, ma'am? Like maybe thinking she didn't hear me, something like that. So I go, ma'am, I have to go to the bathroom. And she just slowly looks up and she goes, I'm busy. Staring at her in disbelief because I just said I have to go to the bathroom. What do you mean you're busy? Just give me a pass. I'll fill it out myself and I'll go to the bathroom. She's like, wait till I'm done. And dare I say this was a thick stack of papers on her desk. And I was like, I can't wait until then. So I'm like, ma'am, it's an emergency. And by the time I nag her enough, she finally decides, fine, I'll write you a pass, go. But she takes her sweet time because for whatever reason, I think she was just out to get me at this point. And then it happens. I fucking peed myself. And so my immediate reaction, that whole fight or flight response, in a fight or flight situation, I freeze, I assess, and then I fight or flight. I don't know how common that is for me to immediately just like, nope. So I peed myself and I immediately, fight or flight, whatever I just said, I jump cut because I forgot, is take off your sweatshirt and tie it around your waist. And I am still very proud of this decision because like, I'm a genius. Like in that moment of panic, I did one thing right. But then I realized because growing up with hearing issues, I've always had problems like my own volume not being too loud or too quiet. Most of the time it's way too loud. I'm thinking like, how else do I get her like attention? Like what, do I waft the smell over to her? No, that's weird. So I go, psst. Ma'am? I peed myself. And at this point she kind of writing the pass and she looks up and she's like, in utter disbelief, like what do you mean you just peed yourself? But as I say this, I think I was too loud. A girl in like a beanbag chair behind the teacher who didn't have very many friends reading a book, she slowly looks up over the top of her book and we make like solid eye contact for like 4 seconds at least. And I go, don't tell anyone, like I mouth it to her and she goes, you know what, you're good, go. What I didn't know is that someone in one of the desks who also didn't have enough friends to socialize with heard. The teacher crosses out where it says bathroom on the pass and writes nurse and is like, you know what, go for the nurse. And I'm so caught up in the fact that I have to cross from her desk to the front of the classroom and book it that I forgot. September 21st. The school year had barely begun. But the worst thing is, I was new to this school. My old middle school shut down, so half of the school didn't know where anything was because we were all new. And our cafeteria like, I have to pass the cafeteria, so there's a door here, a wall of big-ass windows, another door, and that's just the cafeteria. So I'm immediately freaking out because I don't know any back ways to get to the nurse's office, so I have to cross the cafeteria. And then I realize I have no idea where the nurse's office is. I've, like, vaguely heard about the hallway it was in, but when I got to the hallway, I look in, there is absolute tomfoolery going on, because the walls are blank. Like, if you go into that hallway, you can't see any doorways. It just looks like it's a straight corridor of blank white brick walls. And I was not about to waste my time because, you know, urine pants, I gotta take care of those. The hallway next to it is the band room, the locker rooms, and the choir room. I don't hear instruments, so I assume there's no one in the band room besides the teacher. I was right. So I peer in like this, and I go, hey, mister, do you know where the nurse's is? And at this point, I'm, like, purposely, like, going like this in the doorway to keep my abdomen below, like, out of frame for him. And if he noticed anything weird, he did not speak up at all. He is a real one. He was like, oh yeah, it's in the next hallway, just go down it. And I'm like, okay. So I go back to the hallway, hoping, like, praying I'm not gonna start dripping pee all over the floors, which I haven't. I'm also very proud of that. I, like, make it halfway down the hallway, like, I actually entered the hallway this time before going, you see, this ain't it. I need, like, much more specific instructions. So I go back and I'm like, hey, could you, explain a bit more where the nurse is? And he gets up and he's like, you know what, let me just walk with you. At this point, I am, like, internally screaming, no, don't go! You're a fool! Again, if he noticed anything weird about me, like, standing 10 feet away from him so he couldn't smell anything, he didn't point it out. So he walks me down, and he starts having a conversation with me, and I'm like, sir, I really need the nurse, like, you gotta let me go. Because my jeans were, I wouldn't say dark wash, but they're like a weird kind of acid wash that you couldn't tell anything was up with them unless you were searching for it. So I go into the nurse's office, and I'm immediately greeted with, hey, Raven, what's up? So I make eye contact with this kid. He's like, oh, what are you in for? I'm here for a stomach ache. And I immediately go, yes, me too. My stomach aches very much so. And the nurse is like, oh, you got a stomach ache? Did you go to the bathroom? And I'm like, hey, can I talk to you in private? And she's looking at me weird. She's like, you have a stomach ache, don't you? And I go, can I talk to you in private? And I basically grab her arm and just yeet her into the bathroom with me. She's looking at me like I'm crazy. I shut the door and I go, ma'am, I peed myself. Again, she immediately just goes and looks at my crotch and sees that, yes, I did in fact pee myself. She doesn't even ask. Like, she doesn't ask if it's a medical problem, if I'm okay mentally at this point. So we get changed. She gives me the clothes back to take home with me, which is a whole nother issue. So I go to the lunchroom after going back to get my stuff. I apologize profusely to the janitor because it's a middle school. He shouldn't have to deal with that stuff anymore. And I look to the teacher and I realize that I am legitimately worried about this. And I go, please promise me you won't tell anyone. And she goes, I'm not going to tell anyone. And I'm like, no, promise you won't tell anyone. Because at this point, I did not like this teacher enough to the point where I did not trust her as an adult and teacher I could go to. I'm out of breath. And she's like, yeah, okay, I promise. And so I get my stuff and I'm like still giving her the eye. Like, if you tell anyone, I swear to Karen. Her name wasn't Karen. What was her name? Oh, I'm mad. But I walk into the cafeteria, walk in, and I feel eyes on me, and I'm nervous. My heart is beating out of my chest, and I'm, like, literally out of breath, and I have no idea what's going on. So I realize, not at the time, but I realized that I was, like, genuinely scared about what they thought of me, how they're gonna look at me, like, who knows, who doesn't know that I peed myself straight up. The girl who was reading the book who saw me and said that she wouldn't tell anyone comes up and I'm like, hey, did you tell anyone? She's like, no, of course not, but Haley's telling people. And I'm sitting there like, well, how the fuck did Haley find out? And she tells me that she saw it too. And at this point I'm like, well, she's a blabbermouth and talks to people who she doesn't even know for the sake of starting shit. So, like, who knows? How many people know? Am I gonna lose friends over this? Again, new school, I barely had friends at the time, so I was losing my marbles over this. And by the time I got home, I was just like so messed up over everything that I was like, oh, first of all, I did something before throwing myself onto the bed and crying like a teenage girl in an early 2000s movie. But again, she gave me the clothes back, which means I had to do something with them. You would think wash them, right? No, because at the time we did not have a working washer or dryer, and so we had to do our laundry like bi-weekly. And we had just done our laundry, so I had to wait another 2 weeks to wash those clothes. So me panicking, doing the first thing that comes to mind, I take that bag, I run downstairs to our basement, and I throw it under the stairs. And I think it like traumatized me so much that I immediately repressed the memory of putting them down there, because I didn't find them until like 4 years later when we moved out of the place. I saw the bag and it all came rushing back, and I was like, oh, this is disgusting. And I immediately threw it away and just like died inside. But after I threw them under those stairs, I, ran to the room, cried. But my brother, because Haley was on my bus, Haley, I could hear her talking about me and saying my name, but I couldn't hear what she was saying. And I knew that she was telling people because they were laughing, and I felt like it was at me, and it was. But my brother comes up to the door as I'm sitting there crying, and he's banging on the door, and he like slams it open, and he's like, Haley told me what you did, you sicko. And he's like mad at me for this, for something like I am clearly like in distress over. And the first thing he says, now, are you okay? How are you doing? He didn't even ask why it happened. Can you tell I'm upset? Yeah? And you know what he says? I'm telling Mom! This bitch. And he dials our mom's number as she's at work right then and there. And the moment she picks up, not even a hi, hello, we're home, anything like that. It's, Raven peed herself at school today. And I can hear her on the phone, and she just goes, okay, like, what am I supposed to do with this information? I'm like bawling now. And like, I want to talk to Mom. He hands me the phone, and my mom's like, is he telling the truth? Like, I just want to know. To come home after such a bad day, to be yelled at for a mistake, for something I had no control of by someone who is family, not here for it. I say this was one of the worst days of my life, even though I've had much more traumatic things in my life happen to me, because I can pinpoint the exact day I developed social anxiety, because the next day and the day after that and weeks after that and even years after that, every time I go into a crowded area, every time I socialize, I see eyes on me and I think they're judging me, or that they know something about me that I don't want them to, and I just like start getting anxious to a point where it started ruining me. But yeah, that's it. That's an overdramatic telling of the story of how I peed myself in 7th grade. And how it traumatized me so much that I couldn't even go up to the lunch line by myself after that ever again. So graduating high school, because I was so... Ugh. Hope you enjoyed this literal ramble, like, video I made. Threw together because I didn't realize I had time restraints, because the original video I had that corrupted was well over 20-something minutes long of just me talking like this and going even more in depth to this story, because there is more. But subscribe or don't, like or don't, comment or don't. But I do plan on making more videos in the future, like, rebuilding the David statue out of Play-Doh, things like that. I have finger painted a Bob Ross tutorial once on my own time. My fingers were bleeding after from being scrubbed raw, because apparently when you use a finger to paint on canvas, it does not spread. Like, it just doesn't. But I will gladly do that again if it's what you guys want. You can leave suggestions, sketchbook tour, literally anything you want. Or if you guys know my stories, you can say a specific one you want me to ramble on about and get even more in-depth to, and I can do that too.